I built 41 automations in 30 days for a coaching company that went from 0 to multiple 6 figures in 4 months. And I'm going to show you 3 very, very simple truths and actually pretty harsh truths that fly in the face of basically everything that you may be seeing about AI online. Because what you're going to hear is most likely going to shock you, since these 3 truths have almost nothing to do with what's currently going on in the way that people are thinking of dealing with how to run and operate the back-end systems of their business. So, number 1, and this is something really important to nail down. AI is fundamentally unnecessary for building the foundational business functions, which run 95% of the business. So, just as clarification, we built everything on the marketing side, everything from the CRM and the sales automations that pump into the CRM. We built contract creators. We built the onboarding flows. We built out the Airtable that we use for project management. We built a bunch of operations stuff, and we built out a number of pulse check automations to make sure that operations and even analytics was working the way that it intended to. Out of the 41, 1 automation had a single AI node. This wasn't even an AI agent. 0 AI agents were used. 1 automation had 1 AI node, and we ended up turning it off in the first place because it was a nice to have, which we actually didn't really need in the grand scheme of things. So what this means for you in particular is that if you're trying to build out or you're trying to shore up some of the foundational systems that are currently going on inside of your business, if you're focusing on AI agents, when we're dealing with trying to send people who opt into your funnel and pushing them into your CRM, we're trying to make it so that the sales team members are filling in things that they need to be filling in so that you can understand if a call was showed, if a call was qualified, if a contract needs to be sent. None of those need AI, literally none of them. And having AI in front of you is sometimes more unreliable than needs to be, because a lot of the times when I even use AI personally for the automations that I make, I'm using it to create code, and that code gets split out and put into different variables so that I know that this is meant to go here, this is meant to go here, this is meant to go here. And there are very, very few use cases for AI in all of the foundational and fundamental elements of running a business. So this is number 1, and this is actually the most important one. But number 2 is equally as important, but also very, very interesting when you think about it from an actual systems mindset. The most valuable automations enhance proven processes. They do not fix or replace bad process. So going back to even the sales example, so we actually ended up building a form for the sales team to use for reporting, and this form is basically like a 2-button click, essentially linking directly from Close, which is the CRM that was implemented, and it's being used to enable sales management, the CMOs, the CROs, etc., to basically understand how revenue generating processes work. So when someone jumps on the call, like a closer call, after they've spoken to the setters and they've been marked as qualified, they'll have a call with the closer. The closer will sit with them for half an hour, try and sell them in, make sure that they qualify, make sure that they're qualified, make sure that they have the same pains, make sure that they are within ICP, and then closing them on something. Now, obviously, in the sales process, you're going to have people who don't show up. You're going to have people who show up but aren't qualified. You'll have people who may or may not have watched your VSL, and that will indicate exactly how well the marketing process is going. Some people don't even care and they just wanted to get in, and we need to make sure that the people who actually got in, who didn't watch anything, didn't consume anything, we can understand this is the type of person who's just a massive action taker, or they're just a bullshitter and they just don't pay attention. All of these things required a lot of logical processing in order to make sure it was correct before we touched anything in make.com. 90% of the work went into nailing the conditional logic for the form, because when someone is a no-show, the salespeople should be filling out information about what was the payment plan and this, that, and the other. Because you didn't get there. That information just doesn't land on your plate because you haven't had a conversation with the people. You don't even have call notes to fill out because they didn't show up. So 90% of the work went into nailing that conditional logic, making things easy for the sales team to use, because salespeople are monkeys for the most part. And I think dealing with salespeople in general is one of those situations. So I find this with salespeople, I find this with editors, I find this with a lot of people who aren't actually doing things within the realms of some of the more common business structures, unlike operations managers who may spend all of the time in project management and CRM systems. They don't know how to operate the thing that you're trying to get them to operate. So if you're having them click on a bunch of buttons, fill in a bunch of things. They don't even know what to do when it comes to certain things, when it comes to URLs and things like that. So in this particular case, we have an integration link which goes from close into this Airtable form, which we had people filling out. And we didn't want people to misspell names or add emails that were incorrect or that linked to multiple people in the CRM. So the integration link in and of themselves populated that all for them, because if they spent a lot of their time going in and making those things themselves, one, it's just more work for them and they can't be bothered. They just want to sit on sales. They don't want to do any admin work. And two, it also means that anything that you want to do on the back end, as far as sending that information to the requisite places, making sure that that goes back into the CRM, making sure that goes back into whatever you're using for analytics, whether it be Superbase or Google Sheets, that information can actually arrive because they're actually spending the time to do it. If you don't pay attention to the process and the actual people using the process, making things easy, making what needs to be visible when it needs to be there, giving them shortcuts so that anything that requires human input can actually be done without them needing to click around and manipulate URLs or do any kind of nonsense, filling out things that they don't need to fill out. If you don't have that put in place, you're wasting your time. So that was another part of the 90%. And the third part of this was really making sure that the CRM's custom fields were populated exactly as designed. And this was important for the analytics side of things. So ISO formats for dates. So instead of saying, 2nd of October 2025, it's 2025-10-2. Having things like that in place and making sure that we know what the actual formats are meant to be before we start to make any automations. Having simple true and false for specific events. For example, in this case, if someone's a no-show, making it so that showed is true or false, as opposed to, yeah, they showed and this and that, or they didn't show, but they said that they were going to show. And none of that information is really useful when it comes to giving people the visibility at the end. And 10% of everything else was just the building part of it. Because what's most important is not that you're doing what you need to do on the manual input side and making sure that automations are handling just a bunch of things on that front. It's making sure that the end goal is achieved, and the end goal is the most important thing. Because if someone needs something right now and what they need needs to be in a specific format, and that format needs to make sure it feeds into analytics, and it needs to be easily readable, and it needs to be really digestible, doing all the work on the front end to make sure that you get what you need to get is the most important part of that. And that was the reason why all of the work went into the front end, so that everybody else could be doing what they need to do without much hassle. And with this, the sales team could see per lead exactly where they were in the process. So when you click on a lead inside of Close, you just go to the custom fields and you can just see 15 different custom fields, and it shows you exactly where they're at as far as the lead status is concerned. And you can also check the opportunities, because the opportunities get updated in the same manner. And the same goes for project management when we're talking about this actual facet of enhancing proven processes. One interface with one view per person, designed after very, very careful consideration of what's essential, trumps everything else. There's no point in having it to where there are 15 things for people to fill out when you only really need them to fill out 3, and 80 to 90% of the information that is available isn't shown to them when it's not relevant. This is all about making sure that the processes and what people are actually using is the most important thing. And in the words of C.C. Fletcher, my king, you must have strong basics. And that's as far as it goes with all of these things. Now, that kind of outlines the first and the second harsh truths, but the third one is more intricate and more insidious than basically all of them. And that is business logic. Business logic comes first. Most of the things that I do nowadays, as far as how I like to think about dealing with the systems that get built for clients, a lot of it gets done on the front end, where it's questioning why you're doing the things that you're doing. For example, this is a recent onboarding call that I just had, where we took a look, and this was for a content agency, had a look at the layout of their frame.io, had an understanding of what they're doing inside of Google Drive. So for example, in this case, where we're talking about the editing pipeline, the client that they sign is going to be recording videos and then placing those videos inside of a Google Drive. And then the agency is going to take the videos and then put them in their project management system or manage them in some way, shape or form, have the editors go in and edit them and then show them back to the client to make sure that the client understands exactly what they need to be doing for the next videos that they have, they know where they need to improve, and they can also either post it themselves or once they've approved it, have the agency post it on their behalf. Some of these setups are janky as hell. And when looking at it from the perspective of someone who can do automations, there are certain things that just aren't going to work because of the hierarchy and the way things are laid out as far as folders are concerned. You can only go 1 or 2 layers down. Not going to go into specifics as far as how that looks. But if you're doing something stupidly, automating on top of what's stupid is stupid. So don't do it. So the business logic will always come first. And I like to ask a number of important questions in order to ascertain this. So what's the one thing we can do to streamline visibility so that we can deliver information only to the people who need to see it? This goes into a lot of the stuff that we did on the automation front when it came to operations. So there will be a project management system set up in Airtable with the interfaces and the Kanban saying, this is what's to do, this is what's in review, this is what's blocked, this is what got rejected, this is what's done. Very, very simple Kanban, just allows for ad hoc task management to be completed. If there are 150 open tasks assigned to 9 different people, person 1 should not be seeing 150 tasks. They should be seeing the 14 tasks that are assigned to them. And if there are adjacent tasks where they are assigned, but it's not their responsibility in order to do them, they shouldn't need to see them in the same view. They shouldn't need to be updated when their particular system or when their particular part of the process is actually what needs to be done. So for example, if you were a landing page agency and you have a designer, you have a copywriter, and you have a strategist and a CRO person, the CRO person should not be getting design notifications or shouldn't even be seeing them in the first place. He shouldn't even be inside of the Slack channels where those will pop up in the first place. They should only see what is directly in front of them. So the one thing that you can do to streamline visibility so that you can deliver the information only to the people who need to see them is the answer to that is how you would carry out the rest of the system. Then number 2, what are the edge cases in the process? So for example, when someone does X, but Y isn't present, how can we make sure that that doesn't mess up the entire process? For example, and this is something that we ended up having to deal with even with some of the 41 automations that we made. The onboarding flow has about 5 or 6 steps in it. We split it out because when you split it out, because it's such a critical business function, if one step fails, we know exactly where they fail and it doesn't interrupt with any of the other elements of the onboarding process. If a contract is filled without important client detail, for example, the name, can we still send an onboarding form and through an onboarding email? Yes, we can. We shouldn't be limited on that because some of those should be managed anyways by automations that occur and systems that occur downstream of the contract actually being sent and signed. But if you know that there may be a hiccup in part of the system that's being implemented inside of the business, if you haven't planned for that based on how people naturally operate, then you're shooting yourself in the foot by building an automation on top of something that isn't quite ready yet. So this kind of goes back into rule number 2, which is making sure that you only build on top of what's proven as far as the business systems are concerned. And then number 3, what 3 to 5 things need to be done in order for X process to be complete, such that by the time it gets sent to the correct other person, it doesn't get kicked back. So for example, QA, if we're talking about a video that needs to be sent from the person who is from the editor to the social media manager who's doing quality checks, they need to fill out a checklist or they need to have something in place to make sure that they're not ticking off things to make sure that they're ticking things off once they do them. For example, captions. You need to have something in place to make sure that captions don't have spelling errors. And if a caption has a spelling error, you need to know that it's going to get kicked back by the QA people. And having something in place to mitigate that is more important than having the QA person go through and shoot things back left, right, and center. Because you could have a completely automated editing pipeline, but if the editors just don't do the things that they're meant to be doing, and things keep on getting kicked back, then you're just wasting your time, and you haven't actually gained as much as you could have gained from the system. And the system intuitively should be able to tell you, hey, this isn't working the way that it's intended, or you need to do this, that, and the other before you can actually send it off to us. So these are just some examples. You actually really need to spend hours nailing this before even touching the automations. And this is the process that you need to follow. The foundation is establishing the core principles and structures for success, i.e. get the logic down, map out the processes, map out how things are meant to go, keep in mind question all requirements. This is one of the biggest things as well. You're probably doing some stupid stuff you do not need to be doing. If you're doing stupid stuff, stop doing stupid stuff. It's as simple as that. That's the very first thing. You need to make sure that the foundation, before even touching any type of system, is in place. You need to make sure that that's all sorted. Number 2 is then making sure that you get the systems built around the business logic that has been refined, that where unnecessary points have been eliminated and things that don't make any sense to being there are either questioned at the very least or completely removed as well. And only then do you work on or look into or think about any type of automation. So again, I will spend 5, sometimes 6 hours when speaking to the people that I'm working with, making sure that the things that they need are actually what is in front of them, as opposed to 19 parts of a 7-part system that we then go off and we try to automate 19 things when 12 of them just don't need to be part of your process in the first place. And removing those 12 give more of a relief than making the 7 elements that were actually the things that could have been automated or systemized better systemized. So these 3 simple truths help us build the systems from end to end without everything crashing down. And this is exactly how things worked. But there is a key point that's missing in all of this. Your business doesn't operate the exact same way everybody else's does. You may not have a completely linear system. Your sales process, for example, where in this case, it was a 1-call close that happens after setters have a conversation. It may consist of multiple calls. You may be doing audits. You may be doing reviews. You may be doing God knows what in the middle of your process. It may be a 2-call close. It could be a 3-call close if you're working with larger teams. It could be 5, 6, 7, or even 8 calls where a number of them are random follow-ups simply because the people that you're working with have a lot of decision makers, and then there's documentation that needs to be shared, and then there's scoping that needs to be done alongside of that. Which means that the way that we've described how CRMs, for example, should operate could be completely different. The custom fields could be different. You may not even be using ads. You may not need to have UTM parameters, for example, as custom fields inside of your CRM. You may not have any SOPs. You may not have any flowcharts. And you may not have any workflows describing how your system should be made in front of you already. Without a clear understanding of what you need specifically for your business, everything that I've spoken about is air. Going back to the business logic point, if you don't have that down, this is all nothing. This is not something that you can action yourself until that's all down. Everything I told you is completely useless if you don't know how to use it for your own business. So this video here, and it'll be linked to you as well. Click on it and it will take you to one that I made not too long ago, which describes a fundamental business system that you can modify and utilize for whatever business that you are running right now.